Yo, yo, yo. Everybody up. Wake up, wake up, wake up. It's time to do this. It's time to do Wake up. All right, welcome inside the numbers with the People's Pundit. I'm your host, Rich Barris, People's Pundit. Don't forget to like the videos if you like them and share them far and wide. If you're on Rumble, go on over to YouTube, and YouTube, go on over to Rumble, cross-subscribe. It's enormously helpful with what we're calling the 2As, which are algorithms and advertisers. But the best place to follow us is right here, peoplespundit.locals.com, peoplespundit.locals.com. Rich, where's the last poll? It's on Locals. It's on Locals, like a lot of things that you won't find anywhere else. All right, as I was speaking of talking with locals about, we're going to have to start ramping this show up here. There's just way too much going on. I'm going to have to cut some content out. I don't like doing that at all. There's a lot to talk about with polls, but then there are also some news stories that I want to take, have a flashback and go back in time to discuss here and see. I think it's important we start to look more at media bias. It has a lot of impact on public opinion. And as you know, it's not really bias. It's a corruption, a deep, rotten corruption. And this is how one party in this country runs modern campaigns. So it's not like you can ignore it, or you calling it out makes you right wing. It's part of this industry. You cannot separate it when you're talking about or trying to be a psephologist anymore, or a public pollster, or you're anyone who talks about public opinion. The impact from elections to high profile court cases is enormous. If somebody watches MSNBC, it doesn't matter. You could put a tape of Kyle Rittenhouse in front of a juror's face. This is him defending himself. They don't care because of the impact and the power that these organizations, these very crooked organizations, still have on many of us. Now, their power is waning, but it still matters, and we have to discuss it as in this proper context, right? All right. So also, as first thing in the morning, God, it's like 6 o'clock in the morning, I'm up making a new poll for the national, making a new national poll. We have to do another one again, because obviously Kamala Harris is now going to be the nominee. Yes, they can talk all they want about an open convention, but folks, they can't have an open convention. We went over this on Monday. The FEC filing has already been changed. It is now Harris for president. She is going to be the nominee. They can't have an open convention if they want to make sure that everybody has, every Democrat in every state has a Democratic nominee to vote for. It's a load of bullshit. Pardon my French. This is how it's going to go. It's kind of amazing. We haven't heard open endorsements from the man himself who made Joe Biden president and then destroyed Joe Biden's presidency, which is the one, the only Barack Obama. Barack Obama made Joe Biden the president of the United States, and he unmade Joe Biden as the president of the United States. Before we talk about the Secret Service, before we talk about the polling, before we get into anything else, this is now day 1, 2, 3, technically 4 if you count Sunday, but yeah, we have to count Sunday. This is, let's just say, day 3. I'm going to give him a day to hurt and and kind of if you're the president and you get forced out like this, let's be fair and give the old man a day to deal. This is now day 3, so let's call it day 3. The country has got to hear from the president of the United States. Doesn't matter what party they are. It doesn't matter how old they are. It doesn't. There was an attempted assassination on the former president and likely next president's life. The current president was forced out after holding a primary contest. We are in completely uncharted waters. Donald Trump is ending the Russo-Ukrainian war right now. It's not an exaggeration. Donald Trump is negotiating the end of the Russo-Ukrainian war because Vladimir Zelensky sees the handwriting on the wall and he knows who he's going to be dealing with in all likelihood come January 2025. This is crazy. The country cannot be leaderless like this. It's actually worse than being rudderless. It's leaderless. We have nobody representing us in the executive branch. This is so important. This is such an important key point. It's why we were so adamantly opposed to Democrats in their lawfare against Donald Trump and killing and gutting executive privilege, killing and gutting attorney-client privilege, killing and gutting or almost killing and gutting presidential immunity. This is the only office we, as the so-called sovereign voter, have in the most powerful of the three branches of government. The legislative branch has abdicated their duties. They're all a bunch of crooks who either are just willingly crooks and take the money or get caught with like 16-year-old girls in hotel rooms and they get blackmailed. Or, in the case of one congressman from California who refuses to hold Merrick Garland accountable in any way, shape, or form, he can't because he bribed somebody out of the race and the FBI is holding a bribery charge over his head. The legislative branch is done. It's worthless. I hate to say it, until a strong leader comes along and forces them to do the right thing and embarrass. It's like Reagan. He embarrassed them into doing the right thing. He embarrassed Tip O'Neill into doing the right thing. Something like that has to happen. Otherwise, they're worthless. The judicial branch came through in a big way on presidential immunity and is coming through on a lot of other things, but on the lower levels and everywhere else, especially even in the federal government, at lower courts in the federal government, they are completely corrupt. That leaves the voter one real opportunity to affect change and to fight back against the status quo, to have their voice heard and have somebody represent them in this government. And that is the president. And whether that president is a he or a she, they are black or they white, they're a Democrat or they're a Republican, they have got to be a symbol and they cannot hide during key times. And right now, Joe Biden walking from the plane to the car like a geriatric and not able to put together a single sentence is not reassuring. If he cannot run for the office, he cannot govern the office. So he either needs to show his old ass and get out here and stabilize shit, or he needs to go, because this is not funny anymore. It doesn't matter what party you are. This is not okay. I got people calling me from all over the world. And what is going on in your country, man? These are people who rely on us for their defense. They get nervous when things are like this. Worse than that. Not even. They've never even dealt with something like this before. The guy either needs to do the damn job, because a big part of that job is to be a consoler in chief. Something Trump never learned well. And maybe he is going to this time around, because he appears to be at least trying. But part of this job is, so much of it is being a consoler in chief. Reagan knew that. He was so good at it. Barack Obama couldn't console a 6-month-old infant. Like, he's awful at it. Joe actually, once upon a time, had the talent to do that. If he wasn't an idiot, if he didn't act like Joe, come out and panic people during a pandemic like he did during H1N1, he had the talent to do it. At least do that, Joe, for crying out loud. You don't have COVID, bro. Cut this shit. There's something wrong with you. We all know there's something wrong with you. A friend of mine the other day in the media was like, dude, this is heavy Soviet vibes. He's so right. This is very heavy Soviet vibes. This has got to end. This cannot continue until the end of the week. Come on. I can't even imagine it continuing to the end of the week. They sound like they want to do this all summer long. Like, this country is leaderless at the moment. And that is terrifying because it gives a very powerful bureaucracy. There's only one elected person in this entire branch. It's a huge bureaucracy. It's the biggest employer in the world, the largest single employer in the world. And they are doing whatever they want because there's no leader to tell them otherwise. That's insane. It's insane. The guy has got to show himself or get the fuck out. All right, let's get on to our show here. All right, so yesterday was the official day of the beginning of the Harris campaign. There were some polls out yesterday, and we're going to talk about whether or not she will get a bump. I will tell you right now, we're going to go over some polling data. We're going to go over some other stuff. I'm going to push back on some stuff. I'm going to tell Republicans they should expect a couple of things, I think, just because of that media handicap that I was talking about with you before. That being all said, there's only one way to know for sure, because I don't trust anybody else. That's to poll it my damn self. And I will see whether or not she looks like she has gotten a bump, and if that bump would even put her remotely near a lead. Because here's the truth. For years, everyone has acknowledged on the right and the left that Kamala Harris, despite all of Joe Biden's flaws, he was senile in 2020. Everyone knew he was weak. People don't like how he handled Afghanistan. He lied about how he would handle the pandemic. They hold him accountable for that. They hold him accountable for trying to put his political opponent in jail because he can't beat him at the ballot box. All of that is baked in, and it made him a very, very weak candidate. Yet, we all agreed last week, as recent as last week, we all agreed that Kamala Harris was not a better candidate than him. All of a sudden, post-debate, that changes, and maybe it did and maybe it didn't, but it's possible all of this is nothing but a response bias, even in the polls that I honestly don't trust. They're not very good, as I'm going to show you in a minute. Despite their stupid pollster scorecard rating on 5 turd fake or Nate Silver attempting desperately to remain relevant, there are polls that get it right almost every time, and there are polls that get it wrong almost every time. As I will show you, these are the repeat offenders that constantly get it wrong. And by the way, a big part of this narrative is being fueled by polls that had Biden ahead when everybody else had him down. She is, and I am trying to be careful with how I say this, but they're, for all intents and purposes, and this is not in any way an attempt to be misogynistic or prejudiced in any way. It's just an analogy. She's a black Hillary Clinton. She looks great on paper. Everyone sings her praises. She's the media's wet dream. So they all talk about tingles. You hear about I got a tingle. I got this. I got that. Did you hear them all using the same phrases yesterday? Memo must have went out to use these obscure phrases because nobody has heard these phrases like since the 1980s, and yet they all started to use them. And anyway, she looks great, but then she gets out in front of people and bombs because she's unlikable, she ain't funny, and she thinks she's funny. She's one of those people. And her favorability rating, by the way, is currently worse than Joe Biden's. Worse than Joe Biden's. Anyway, she comes out. And yeah, I kid you not. I mean, you can look it up. It's absolutely, her favorability rating is worse than Joe Biden's right now. Okay, so there are 2. It looks like I only grabbed 1. Do I want to? Yeah, I do want to. All right, so I'm going to play one first. I think I want to play the more general one first because I think that, don't do it. I think that, if I play the more general one first, then the other one is more in-depth and we can get in on it a little bit. We can get, not in on it, we can get into it a little bit more. All right, so this one's a little bit long, though, and I don't want to spend the whole time doing it. But I think it's worth pointing out that there were things going on before the assassination, before the debate, And I'm having a very there's a pollster, a friend of mine, who's polling it right now, and it's like amazing to me how because of course we ask each other for advice. Hey, what do you think about this? What, especially if it's something that doesn't look like other polls that may have come out. We want to kind of double check and get each other's opinions. And it's amazing to me how similar the data look, the raw data, and we'll see what they do when they process that data. It should be out. I think it's coming out tomorrow. But it looks like the polling we've been doing for years. It's like all of a sudden, everyone forgot about the years and years worth of polling that we have had comparing Joe Biden to Kamala Harris, and whether or not Harris is stronger than Biden against Trump, or Newsom is stronger than Biden against Trump, or this one's strong. We've done them all. She does worse with specific groups. And I'm curious because we're going to talk about one of those groups in more specificity. But it's possible that's one group I could see potentially bouncing back for her. I just don't think it'll hold. We'll see, though. We'll see. But as of now, I'm having a hard time believing some of the polls that have come out. Speaking of which, before we play that video clip, because there's one out today that just, and one that came out late yesterday that blows holes in this entire narrative. But the one that got it kicked off was Reuters. All right. And I want to show you this right here. This before, and I'm so glad I grabbed this, before it was added to the Real Clear Politics average. Okay. As you can see that there are same repeat offenders over and over again. There's even one after they changed their pollster because Gary Langer had Donald Trump doing too well against Joe Biden. So they shit canned Gary and they put and they shit canned his operation. And now they're using the same panel that set off this narrative. So even before there was this big, the assassination, the debate, everything, they were the only poll that had Harris up. This was before it all. I mean, they were way outside of the consensus before any of this happened. Newsflash, the ABC News Washington Post poll is the same panel, and it's essentially the same poll as the Reuters poll. They're both using the Ipsos Knowledge panel, which is not a very good panel. It's very well respected in the industry, and maybe it's the polling director that's overlooking that data. There are metrics we can use to look at the quality of online panels, and they are nowhere near anywhere near the higher quality panels. I'm sorry, it's just true. The Cint Lucid panel, which was just acquired by Cint, Lucid Holdings was just acquired by Cint, is the best panel by key metrics. Every year we dive into it. Every year they're all analyzed. They are the best. This is nowhere near it. And yet it is the source of data for at least 3 polls that you see on your screen right now. And then they pretend like it's a different data set or something. Confirming it's like the polling equivalent of circular reporting in the intelligence community. And that, what is that? It's like Agent A hears from source A that Donald Trump pisses on women in Moscow. Okay. Then Agent B hears from source A the same thing. When Agent A makes the claim that I have information that Donald Trump pisses on hookers in Moscow, Agent B then goes, oh, I heard that too, and I can confirm it. What you don't hear is that it's the same source. So you're not confirming independently. You're both circular reporting. And then Agent B will say, that's confirmation. And it goes around supposedly lending credibility to the original claim, or lending credibility to a claim. That's a good word. In this case, it's a polling lead. That it gives the appearance that things are confirming that claim. Independent sources are confirming that claim when in fact they are not. When in fact it is the same damn source. And we can go through the national numbers. The fact is They herded at the end to get somewhat believable in 2020, but they overstated Biden routinely on an average of about 6 points. Their final poll herded, so it wasn't as big of an overstatement. However, they still overstated Joe Biden by about 3 points. When you look at the state level data, here are 4 states that I grabbed immediately from our list of the worst pollsters of 2020. You will see that Reuters and the Ipsos panel absolutely suck ass. Florida was Biden +4. Donald Trump won the state of Florida by the largest margin for any Republican since George W. Bush in 2004. In Michigan, it was Biden +10. That bitch was within the sampling era and not a squeaker, but within the sampling era. North Carolina was Biden +1. Trump held North Carolina, as you can see, and Wisconsin too was Biden +10, and that was a squeaker. If not for a couple of thousand indefinitely confined statuses that were claimed illegitimately, Donald Trump would have won the state of Wisconsin. So give me an effing break. This is one of the worst polls to pretend all of a sudden it's like this huge basis for this. Oh my God, it's a surge for Harris. Is ridiculous. And once again, that panel had Harris ahead before all this because the ABC News Washington Post poll is using the same data set. That is not Gary Langer anymore and his group and his live callers, using the original methodology that they have always used. And by the way, it was a methodology that was producing Trump +6s, Trump +10s, and then the last one, which they spiked the result of, was Trump +12. I know it for certainty. They spiked his last general election result, gave you the primary numbers and gave you favorability numbers, gave you some other questions that they asked, and they withheld the Trump +12 lead that they found over Biden in that last poll before Iowa. And you haven't seen one since. It's been gone ever since. That is the Ipsos panel. They're just different people crunching the data differently. It's just the same way Yahoo News. Guess what? It's the same as the Economist data. It's the same as any other YouGov source data set. The only difference is that Yahoo News gets it and decides, I think I'll do this with the data set. The Economist gets it and decides, I think I'll do this with the data set. Yesterday, we saw a YouGov poll come out. And shocker, that YouGov poll, which was conducted by Yahoo, had a tie. It's not on this, but it is. And let me show you just so you know. I'm not BSing you. Here is the Real Clear Politics list. And you can see right there the Economist YouGov poll. The Yahoo News poll, which is the same data set again as the Economist and others. Yet today, when the Economist came out, their result was different. And they're showing a much more enthusiastic Republican electorate, which obviously is giving Trump a much better result. As you can see, in the 5-way race, it is Trump +3. And I know they did the head-to-head. Let me see. Let me refresh it. Did they just not add it yet? They did do the head-to-head. I want to say it was Trump +2. I think so. Give me a second. Let me look it up because I think it's worth looking up to tell you. I'm pretty sure it's either tied or it's Trump. No, it's not. Prefer Harris or Trump. Winner, Harris or Trump. It's Trump +2. All right. Again, same data set, especially since YouGov got too big for their britches, and now they come to our panel to get responses. So that I know it for a certainty. And when they are doing these polls, they're simply giving the same data set to different people, and those people are deciding what they want to use, what they want to count, et cetera, et cetera. All right, and how they want to weight it. And all they did yesterday was decide, I think I'll weight it a little bit more Democratic, because the difference between the Yahoo News poll was how much more Democratic it was weighted. And this is a huge argument in my mind why I don't wait for party and why pollsters should not wait for party. This has long been debated. It's fine. There are honest people who do wait for party. The problem is there is always going to be at least a suspicion that you put your thumb on the scale and decided that you thought an electorate should be more Democratic or more Republican than it actually came in. There are plenty of other demographic variables that tell you or throw up a red flag if a group is underrepresented or a group is overrepresented. Is my school of thought has always been that you focus on those key variables. Region and education, or area, actually it was more like geography is a better way to explain it. Geography and education was the main problem for these pollsters leading up to 2020 and then going into 2020 and then beyond 2020. They were always big red flags. I always made that case. If you're waiting for party, you are compensating for not speaking to enough people in certain groups. That has always been my belief. And again, there are honest people who disagree with me, and they do their thing. But for me, my school of thought has always been to ask the pollster, who the hell do you think you are? Who the hell do you think you are? Who are you to think that you know better than the electorate on what they are, who they are, what they identify as, who's going to show up and who's not? Who the hell do you think you are? No election is the same as the election that preceded it. No electorate is the same as the electorate that preceded it. 2016 was D+3. 2020 was D+1. 2012 was D+5. You see where I'm going with this? And actually, 2020 could be even if you look at the validated voter surveys. Some of them think that it was actually even, or R+1. There's an argument made there. I'm talking about the Edison exit polls. No election is the same from one to the other because the population, the eligible voting population changes. Realignments happen. You have white working class people in 2012 and 2008 who voted for Barack Obama in droves. And then they were at that time identifying as either a Democrat or an independent. Come 2016 and beyond, they were no longer doing that. And they were identifying, when you called them in Pennsylvania, for instance, which in the voter file was still a minimum of a D+6 population. Yet when you called them in 2020, it was R+1. Why? Because registration is static and identification is fluid. If you wait for that, you're putting your thumb on the scale. Ann Seltzer had always a great way. And honestly, she's a big reason why I think she is. Big reason why I've solidified that school of thought. Because I remember hearing her speak many years ago and deciding whether or not that was a valid thing, reading studies and deciding whether or not, if we went back and we waited for party, then that helped us get to a closer result. And that may be the case, but there's probably a reason that you messed up in the first place, and you have to fix that first. Your waiting retrospectively is just trying to compensate for what you did wrong in the first place. And I remember her being asked a question years ago and her going, what would I wait it to? What would I wait it to? And people are like, well, the last election, there was this many, Republicans, this many. And she just very simply put, but it may not be like that this year. It's that simple. All right? It's really that simple. And in the case of some of these other pollsters, I got to tell you, so again, there are honest people who believe it, but this isn't what's going on here. You can't tell that your white working class sample's fucked up. D+6 is why you have Kamala Harris and why you had Joe Biden still in the 30s with the white working class. As you saw in our last poll, Joe Biden was at 26% of the white working class vote. If your sample is too Democratic, you're not only going to skew the opinions and the margins or the vote preference margins of other groups like educated whites and, whatever it may be, throughout any demographic, you will also skew it among non-college whites. So if for some reason you have Joe Biden at 40% or Kamala Harris at 40% of the white working class vote, you probably fucked up. And waiting for party is only going to make it worse. But I digress. All right. So let me shut up for a second and let's play this. I'm going to play the longer clip, so bear with me. It's a broader clip. And we've been going back to him because listen, there's two reasons I'm going back to this guy time after time. One is, yeah, Jack, your interview with Tucker Carlson was amazing. Congratulations, number one, but also it was insane, brother. So thank you for watching as always. And I was watching your interview as well. That's Jack Posobiec. Everybody say hello to Jack. Hi, Jack. Everybody say hi, Jack. We love Jack. I'll be on Jack's show, I think, tomorrow. After this program today, I'm jumping on Charlie Kirk around 2:30. And then 5 p.m., I'm jumping on Sean Parnell. Friday, I'll be on North Carolina's most favorite political radio show, which is, of course, is Talk of the Town. That's early in the morning. I know a ton of you live in the area and you listen to Henry. I'll be on with Henry on Friday. Don't miss it. Henry and Patrick, love those guys. They arguing over me this morning. I heard you, Henry. And I love you too, man. Don't yell at Patrick. All right. Don't be angry at Patrick. He's a good guy. So yeah, basically it's going to be a full card here, but I'm going back to this guy for two reasons. One is he hasn't had his head directly up his ass. All right. Even through the primary, he understood what we were talking about. He don't like it because he's a leftist, but he understands it and at least he acknowledges it. Secondly, the second reason I keep going back to him is because the CNN anchor keeps giving him credit for things we've been talking about for months and even years in some cases before him. And they keep going, and you know what? You were the first one to point this out. And I just laugh. And I want you to hear it because I want you to realize what bullshit the media, like what bullshitters the media really are. I mean, they're just unbelievable bullshitters. I really hope we have time to explore this story about Kamala Harris that I don't want people to forget. So let me shut up and let's play this clip and get through this.
Senior data reporter Harry Enton joining me now to run the numbers. There is a lot of excitement. We have not seen this kind of shift in tone from the Democrats in particular. I can't remember a time where we've been through something like this.
And let me just stop and say right then and there, this is something I'm very interested in finding out, and why one of the main things that I'm interested in seeing myself that I do not trust other people with. Not everybody, but many of these pollsters get wrong the motivation to vote. And this has been happening to us since 2014, where anytime the public pollsters at large would disagree with us on who is more motivated or more enthusiastic, et cetera, we were right and they were wrong. Hillary Clinton, the ABC News poll, and many others were showing much more motivated base for Hillary Clinton. And our tracking poll was a ridiculous advantage for Donald Trump. And at the end of the day, we were correct. I could keep going on, but there's something, I don't know if they're just lying or what, but that's a major finding that's different between us and others that will throw up a red flag for me. And I need to know whether or not that is happening now. I can't say for certain it is. I kind of expect some Democrats to get more motivated now that Joe Biden is out. I do. However, there are 15 million votes that just got thrown through the shredder, man, run through the shredder. So you could see it going both ways. By the way, Locals, we had this conversation on Locals yesterday. Another reason to subscribe to Locals. We discussed this, the hive mind, and Democrats may not react as you think they would react. Most normal people would be upset that they just took their votes and wiped their asses with them, but they're Democrats. And we went and explored the history of that in a post on Locals yesterday. I'm not going to revisit it here. Go check it out on Locals. But it's worth keeping in mind.
This has been the craziest month in American politics that I can possibly recall. It was less than a month ago that Joe Biden and Donald Trump were debating in the CNN debate.
Less than a month.
Less than a month. We had a failed assassination attempt. We had a president literally saying, no, I'm not going to run for re-election less than a month before the Democratic National Convention. But here is the thing, Sarah Seidner, for all of the excitement that Democrats have over Kamala Harris, it is going to be difficult to beat Donald Trump, and I want to give you an understanding of why. Let's take a look here first at the favorable views of Donald Trump. We know that Donald Trump has historically been unpopular, but take a look now. After the Republican National Convention.
With certain people. With others, he's historically popular. And I think that's what matters, because in his situation, you could have him win an election just based on those people because of the Electoral College, which is not a bad thing. It's a good thing. by the way, because those people are underrepresented in the government at large. The only place that they are well represented is the Electoral College. That is how the founders intended it. They did not want certain people to be isolated, without a voice, and left behind. So this isn't a bad thing. I'm just saying it was always worth exploring the groups that held Donald Trump in high regard. And that is what everybody missed. So much of what everybody missed with Donald Trump. But now Donald Trump is resurging again. Once upon a time, folks, 2 years ago now, we were among the first to tell you, holy shit, this guy's favorability is 47%, 48%. Where did this come from? He's about to go positive. He has had a retrospective image makeover, the likes of which you just have never seen in modern American politics. It usually takes an incumbent president a decade or so to get their image back when they leave office, the way that Donald Trump left office. Herbert Walker Bush, right? George W. Bush didn't get his image back until like 10 years ago, man. I mean, it took a long time, right? So almost decade for W. Bush. With Donald Trump, it took less than a year before his favorability image began to improve. And that is because people were comparing his presidency to the one they were currently sitting in, and that presidency sucked ass, and they wanted Trump back. So this is where we're at, and this is part of the backdrop of this whole election that you cannot dismiss.
In the ABC News Ipsos poll, he recorded his highest ever favorable rating at 40%. That's not a one-off. Take a look at the Quinnipiac University.
That is low. That is still, that goes to show you where the Ipsos panel is, folks. That tells you everything you need to know about the Ipsos panel. The Harvard-Harris poll has Trump positive. The Emerson College poll has him either slightly negative or positive. Quinnipiac, as Harry's about to explain, is one of the worst polls and is one of the most left-wing polls out there. And they have Trump at his highest ever at 46%. We had Trump the last time we asked at 48%. I'm curious to see. We should do favorability ratings for both of these individuals, Harris and Trump. And it may even think about putting Biden in there. But I think we need to do a favorability gauge, add to scale as we always do, and go from there. But that 40% is very, very low. Pew Research has Donald Trump surging in his retrospective. So does the Wall Street Journal poll. 40% is still abysmal low. And that is way outside the consensus. Okay.
University poll, 46%. That's the highest ever in that pollster. The fact is, Donald Trump is more popular now than he ever has been before. So yes, Democrats can make this switcheroo, but they're still going to have to beat Donald Trump, a Donald Trump who is stronger, Sarah, than he has ever been before.
It will be interesting to see how voters respond to all of this. Now, how is he doing relative to Harris, who did run at one point? What do those numbers look like?
Yeah, so let's take a look here, right? We've been focusing so much on how Harris was doing better than Biden in the polling, and that's true. If we take a look at the national average, what do we see? We see Donald Trump up by 1. That's a within the margin race, right? That's a close race. But remember, of course, in the national popular vote, Democrats tend to do better there than they've done in the Electoral College, at least when Donald Trump has been running for president. So last time around, when Joe Biden barely won in the Electoral College, he actually won the national popular vote by 4 points. So at this point, Donald Trump is running 5 points better. That's a 5 of some sort. 5 points better than he was 4 years ago against Joe Biden. So at this particular point, whether you look at the favorable ratings, whether you look at the horse race polling, we see that Donald Trump is doing significantly better than he was doing 4 years ago at this point. Kamala Harris is going to have to do better than this, of course, if she wants to win the popular vote, but more than that if she wants to win the Electoral College, where she'll likely have to outperform how she's done nationally, because the fact is, if you got to tie it in the national popular vote, that is probably not good enough if you're Kamala Harris and you want to win the election against Donald Trump.
If you're Joe Biden, I think that some of the evidence, the newer analyses that I've read, I agree with, which is that Biden could have done, like I had said before, he needed a 4-point win in order to secure an Electoral College victory. There's new arguments that I do think are sound that suggested that Biden needed probably more like 2.5 points. All right, at this point. So things have changed because of the realignment. And I think that's at least valid. It may be wrong, but it's a valid argument to make. That's Joe Biden. Why? because Joe Biden was doing worse in certain big blue population centers because of the realignment. Among certain non-whites, he was going to lose support among in certain urban areas like the 5 boroughs, for instance, like Clark County, Nevada, for instance. It doesn't mean he still couldn't have eked out a win by holding on to, let's say, the Rust Belt 3, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. He still could have done that. He could have ran 15 points under in New York from his 2020 margin and still held Michigan, given the realignment, under certain circumstances. I would actually argue that Pennsylvania may have been the easier one this time around, but Michigan historically has been the one more favorable to him. He's Scranton Joe. It's different for him. It's different for him because of the senior vote as well. A lot of seniors in a state like Pennsylvania. All right. And they're different than seniors that are in, say, Florida, Collier County, Florida, or Lee County, Florida, right? Very different. Pinellas County, Florida, right? Miami-Dade, Florida. Very different there. That is not as strong of an argument when you look at somebody like Kamala Harris. She could do better in California than Joe Biden, for instance. She could do better in like Ventura in the suburbs than Joe Biden, for instance, outside of Los Angeles, but still lose. She could win the popular vote by 4% because of that, yet still lose. You have to remember that Hillary Clinton's entire popular vote lead in 2016 was due to 2, you can argue 3, major metropolitan areas. She lost everything else. Joe Biden was doing better in Lackawanna. He was doing better in Monroe County. He was doing better in Erie County, in Northampton County, right? Areas like this. Because he's Joe Biden, he has some working class appeal. There is zero evidence that Kamala Harris has any working class appeal whatsoever. What she has is appeal among those voters who were really souring on Biden because they were starting to realize that, yes, he's senile, but also he didn't do what he said he was going to do. These are educated swing voters, and they were shying away and thinking, oh, maybe I'll go third party, or maybe I'll even go back to Donald Trump. I think Harris could do better with some of those votes. Their white guilt kicks in, and it's just natural, and it's not natural. It's human nature, I would say, to be inclined to be duped by that kind of thing, but it shouldn't. I don't think it's right to say it's natural. But either way, she does better with those voters, but isn't going to do better in Erie County, isn't going to do better in Northampton, isn't going to do better in Luzerne, isn't going to do better in Saginaw, right? Isn't going to do better in Genesee, isn't going to do better in Monroe, isn't going to do better in Ashton Bayfield, right? Just isn't. Is she going to peel back one of the 31 pivot counties in Iowa? She's Barack Obama now? If you think, and I've seen it on Twitter, if you think she's the female, Barack Obama, you're deluding yourself. You're a bubble Democrat. She's far more like the black Hillary Clinton than she is the female Barack Obama. Barack Obama's likable. Barack Obama's cool. Barack Obama can put on a face that at least looks authentic. Nothing about Kamala Harris is authentic. It's not going to come across. Why does this matter? Because that authenticity that Barack Obama had, whether you liked it or you didn't like it, goes a long way in states like Minnesota, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Iowa, Ohio, where people really do value authenticity, and they value, he had enough folksiness. All right? He had enough folksiness. Don't you know, Bobby? He had enough of that. She doesn't have any of that. Her first thing in Wisconsin yesterday was an absolute joke. If you looked at the crowd, the only people there were old white liberals. That's it. And yes, I know Wisconsin is very white, but actually Wisconsin has one of the higher populations of subgroups like Asians than any of the other of the Rust Belt 3s. You didn't see them there. I had to struggle to find a brown face in that crowd. They were all old, white, you know what I'm talking about. The Dane County liberal folks, the Milwaukee liberal. They were all that. Here's Chuck Schumer. I got to bring this up because I think it really shows you what astroturf's not even the word. I mean, this campaign is utterly fake. I mean, it's just fake. And I put this on Locals too, so bear with me, Locals. But how could I not play this again?
The process is played out from the grassroots bottom up. We are here today to throw our support behind Vice President Kamala Harris. I'm clapping. You don't have to. So now.
Nobody clapped. Now, that wasn't at the rally, but nobody clapped. If that was Joe Biden, people would have clapped. Those are his peers. If that was Barack Obama, people would have clapped. He's well liked. Media would have been clapping. Not even they were clapping for Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris does not have a good reputation on Capitol Hill. As a matter of fact, I strongly suggest you watch the latest interview with Megyn Kelly on her podcast with Spielman. I'm probably saying his name wrong. He's been doing a lot of reporting on this, and he's going to have a big story. But I mean, it's been in the Washington Post. It's been in Politico. 90% of her staff as first-year vice president quit because she's abusive. She's not well liked among her colleagues and her peers. She's a bully. The number one word you will hear when you talk to people who work for Kamala Harris is bully. She's abusive. She makes fun of your looks. She makes fun of your sex life. She drums in your sex. Folks, you're going to hear some shit. This is not a likable woman. And all of this comes through on camera, which is why she couldn't get past Tulsi Gabbard in a Democratic primary. She's an awful candidate. But again, I would just caution Republicans, that's not how Democrats win elections anymore. They rely on a deeply corrupted media to tell their story. And they rely on rich, old white people to fund their ballot chasing operations. They don't give a damn about all the black belt voters who voted for Joe Biden in the primary. They don't give a shit about them. BLM yesterday released a statement saying we demand another open primary. Good luck. You already had a primary. They didn't give a shit. They took your votes and they wiped their asses with them. And then they threw them in the toilet bowl and flushed them. So either get over it or don't. You're not getting a say. As Malcolm X used to say, you've been hoodwinked, bamboozled by the rich, white liberal. They decided they know better than you. That's it. Suck it up or don't, man. I'm sick of hearing you bitch. You're voting for the same people who killed Malcolm X, by the way. You know that? You even know that? You look like a fool. They've made a fool out of you. Absolute fool. And when all this stuff comes to light, I'm curious about how, and I just cannot wait to get back in the field. I want in the field right now. I'm so curious. How is this going to play out with younger voters? What do you guys think? How is this going to play out with younger voters? And it's already 12:48. All right, when we come back, we'll look at that. I have to take my break here. Woo! I had a lot to say, in case you didn't notice. I had a lot to say and still do. Anyway, where's the President of the United States? For crying out loud. The world is on fire. This guy's nowhere to be seen. Now would be the perfect time to talk to you about alternative places to invest your money, alternative ways to protect your wealth. Stocks are unpredictable. And let's face it, inflation impacts the value of currencies. And that's why I want to talk to you about Freedom Gold USA. If you've ever thought about investing in gold or silver, or you're just interested in diversifying your portfolio, then Brian and the folks at Freedom Gold USA definitely are the people that you should check out. And what I like about them, they really are all about helping you make smart investment choices in precious metals. They really do believe the more you know, the better. They want you, to have all of the guides and consultations that you need to feel confident in making a decision without pressure or a hard sell. Also, they guarantee competitive pricing on some of the best quality and purity gold and silver you will find, and especially for our audience. They have a tremendous deal going on right now that you will not find anywhere else. You call some of these other people, they're going to tell you $50,000 minimum investment. We're running a special, though. Don't worry, $20,000 minimum investment. Even Freedom Gold USA is normally $5,000, but not for our audience. At the audience People's Pundit, it's $500. That's it. That is your initial investment cost, and that is unheard of, especially without all the extra stuff I'm going to tell you. It's unheard of, but you still don't have to worry about extra fees. You will still get free shipping and insurance on those orders. Plus, if you go a different way, you might even qualify for some free silver if you do choose a qualifying purchase. Either way, whatever you do, you're going to be thrown into a pool for our audience, and someone's going to win some free currency, which is incredible. If you open a new gold or silver IRA, they're going to give you a $500 credit for it. This is a nice bonus. The best part about the deal, again, is that it's simple and hassle-free with Freedom Gold USA. You will not get any pushy sales tactics from Brian and his team. They're all about helping you reach your financial goals in a way that works for you. So I would definitely recommend giving them a call. The number's on the screen. 888-279-3592, 888-279-3592. That is our number for the People's Pundit. But don't forget, if you want to tell them, that would be great as well. The People's Pundit sent you. Or you could just go to the website they made for us, freedomgoldusa.com/rich. freedomgoldusa.com/rich. Find out about all the latest special offers and deals that you may qualify for. Again, with the number 888-279-3592 or freedomgoldusa.com/rich. Give them a call today, folks. Get started on securing your financial future, especially before that deal runs out. It's just an incredible, incredible deal. And you may win. You may win. I am not in that pool myself. So that's one less. And I just increased your odds by one, even though even I cannot pass up that deal. All right. So let's get to the next one before we get talking about this ability to just forget about the grievances people have with the Biden administration and just somehow wipe the slate clean with Kamala Harris. I don't buy it. Years of polling data suggesting that she is a worse candidate. I know I did it myself. Others confirmed it. I'm not buying this. Maybe things have changed. Maybe there's a response bias that's impacting a lot of these other polls, and they're just getting a pop for Democrats because of that. I just don't buy it. And I want to get in the field myself. But as it stands right now, younger voters, let's take them for instance. It does appear that she's doing a little bit better with younger voters, but she's not stopping the trend, and it is a trend. Do you remember during the convention, I named the episode that covered the convention, Trump made the Republican Party cool again? You remember that? There is no doubt that in the Trump era, Republicans are recovering some of what they lost from the Bush era among young voters. How much is the question? Like, Trump won every age group in states like Iowa and Ohio. He won every single age group. In 16, he won 18 to 24. In 2020, some of that reversed in Iowa. I think it was 25 to 29. He lost a little bit. I think it was. I'd have to go back and look. But in Iowa, I think it's 18 to 24. I'd have to go back and look. But in any event, that's gone now. And he's winning every age group again. In Florida, he's literally ahead in every age group that we polled. And the question is, is Kamala Harris the candidate who's going to come step forward and just somehow reverse this. And with that, let's go back to Harry real quick, because he does a different segment where he's asked this question, and listen to what the media anchor says. Listen to this.
So I want to take a look at Trump versus Democratic margin. Just remind folks where we were at the end of the 2020 campaign. Joe Biden won voters under the age of 35 by 21 points. What do we see with Kamala Harris? Well, she's still ahead, but the margin here is significantly less than what we saw with Joe Biden back in 2020. She's up by just 9 points. You may make the argument that was better than Biden was doing before he got out, but compared to that Democratic baseline, where Democrats have historically in presidential elections, at least this century, been carrying that young vote by 20 or more percentage points, she is way down from that. So if this is unique support among young voters, I would like to know what non-unique support is. Is it even worse than this?
Is she doing better than Biden was, though?
She was doing slightly better. Maybe Biden was up by, like 6 on average or 5. This is maybe slightly better, but this.
Speaking of CNN, I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt. I don't mean to interrupt Henry. I don't mean interrupt Harry. Okay. But there is a new poll that just dropped. It is breaking. It does suggest that Harris is doing a little bit better than Biden. However, it ain't good enough. The new CNN poll is out, and Harris is down to Donald Trump, and it is bad because Donald Trump is basically at 50% without leaners. I mean, he's just under without leaners. He is just under 50%. This is an absolute nightmare for Democrats. It says Harris improves on Biden's performance against Trump. An early look at new matchup. However, give me a break. She's down, man. She is down. It says the voters are widely supportive of Biden's decision to step aside. I'm curious, though, that's not really the right question to ask. The right question is whether or not Democratic voters are okay with donors selecting a replacement for Joe Biden. Like, we had asked voters ourselves whether or not they thought that Joe Biden, should be replaced. 2/3 of Democratic voters told us no. And then they voted for Joe Biden. So it's a little weird to me. But then again, remember, though, the hive mind mentality. If you're not a Democrat out there, I'm talking to you. If you are a Democrat, I'm sorry. This may be painful to hear, but it's true. And locals, maybe I should at least invite them in on the conversation we were having yesterday. Invite everybody else in, because they'll understand it if I at least give them some context. Okay, how can I put it? In 2016, Republicans were tired of being told who was next in line, who was more electable, who was only electable in many cases. They were tired of Rupert Murdoch and Roger Ailes picking their nominee. Now, Roger, I got to take out of this equation because Roger was not anti-Trump, okay? But Murdochs are anti-Trump. The Fox board is anti-Trump, and always has been. Always has been. When 2016 was going on, it was, hi, Robo. When 2016 was going on, at first, it was all about Scott Walker. Is he the dark horse? And I liked Scott Walker. Good guy, and it would have made a solid. Before Donald Trump, Scott Walker is the only Republican candidate to lead in both Iowa and New Hampshire, right, seeking the nomination. He lost that, but he was for a time. Trump would then follow, and then it would take him, of course, because Cruz won in 16, it would take him until 2020 to be the first nominee to carry both. After it became clear that Walker was not ready for the job, it was Jeb Bush. After it became clear that Trump was going to hammer Jeb Bush, it was Marco Rubio. After it became clear that Marco Rubio couldn't survive his own state, it was John Kasich. It was anyone. John Kasich if you're in Ohio. It was Ted Cruz if you're in Texas. If you're in Wisconsin, vote for Ted Cruz. If you're in Indiana, vote for Ted Cruz. If you're in Florida, vote for Marco Rubio. I mean, it was ridiculous. If you were in South Carolina, vote for this one. I mean, remember, Nikki Haley endorsed Marco Rubio. Republicans said, fuck you. We think Donald Trump is the strongest candidate. All the polls said he wasn't. The Fox poll, the CNN poll, every poll had either Whoever was the candidate du jour, the anti-Trump candidate du jour, was always doing better than Trump in the battleground states and in the national polls against Hillary Clinton. Some of these polls before the Democratic primary wrapped up, many of them, still had Trump losing to Bernie Sanders by a lot. And I remember at the end of the day thinking to myself, really? Which Rust Belt state is Ted Cruz going to carry? Which blue wall Rust Belt state is Jeb Bush going to carry? Because you got to remember, none of that was even part of the equation for them back then. The equation was somehow flip Virginia back, hold North Carolina, squeak by in Florida, and maybe get Ohio. And I don't know, something else could fall into place, maybe Colorado. I don't know. They were throwing all sorts of shit against the wall to see what would stick. And they had plenty of shit because they were full of it. None of them had any chance of winning that election. Full stop. Only Donald Trump was going to be able to beat Hillary Clinton, and the Republican voter knew it. And what I've said before, and I'm going to say it like this again, they declared their independence from the corporate media and the party structure, and they said, we know better than you, and we're going to do what we're going to do. Suck it up. It is what it is. And they nominated Donald Trump, and he did go on to beat Hillary Clinton. One of the biggest questions for me in 2020 was whether or not the Democratic primary voter after Hillary Clinton would be able to do the same thing. Are they, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to insult you if you're a Democrat, but I think you need to take a hard look in the mirror and listen to what I'm saying right now. They lost. They were told to ignore that they wanted Bernie Sanders. They liked him better than Hillary Clinton. They were told to ignore that. Hillary Clinton was the only electable one, and she lost, just like Republicans were told that Mitt Romney was the only electable candidate, and they lost. And John McCain was the more electable candidate, and then they lost with him, and they were tired of losing, and they said, we're done with you. We're going to vote for who we want to vote for, period. You're not going to influence this time. And I thought maybe Democrats will be able to do that this time. God, wouldn't that be glorious? Because that is really what it's all about. And as a pollster, that's what our system is all about. And as a pollster, it is sad to me, depressing even, to listen to voters say that they want another candidate. They want Bernie Sanders. He was by far their first choice. Sad when that is the case. And then Barack Obama gets all of his friends in the media to go on this big social bias and cognitive bias tour to convince these poor bastards that they have to abandon the person that they truly want to vote for a guy they don't want. And the big question to me was it was the biggest social experiment of 2020, as far as I'm concerned, before all of the rest of the shit happened. Will Democrats fall for it again? And they did. They did. Majorities went to the polls wanting to vote for Bernie Sanders and instead voted for Joe Biden. That's how Biden carried Maine, Minnesota. How Bernie didn't romp it in Texas. It was sad. Barely held in Colorado because, there's younger voters and they just didn't give a shit, and there's too many of them there. But every other age group, it was pathetic. Not just sad, but it was pathetic to watch millions of people herded like cattle into a construct, a mental construct, and then forced to behave the way that their masters wanted them to behave. They were incapable of independent, critical thought. They were incapable of it. They were a hive mind. The queen bee told them what to do, and like little drones, they did it. So you have to understand the mentality of the Democratic voter when we look at this and the impact that potentially could have on this race, and what CNN's saying. Oh, yeah, you took my vote and wiped your ass with it. But, I'm super excited to vote for Kamala now. Thank you for telling me what's best for me. Thank you. Can I have my Milky, please? I want to go back to bed. Thank you, Daddy Barack. Thank you, Mommy CNN. Sing me a lullaby. That's who we're dealing with. You have to understand that. Like any normal independent or Republican voter would be furious. And that's what I want to know. Those independents who are truly independent, who thought, you know what, I'm going to cross over not to be a pain in the ass in Donald Trump's side or thorn in Donald Trump's side or pain in the ass, but because I'm sick of voting for a Biden or a Trump or a Clinton, I think I'll vote for Nikki Haley. That voter in New Hampshire who prides themselves on participation, who values their vote like that. I want to know what they think. So I'm not surprised to see what CNN is showing. That being said, what about the ones we're not hearing about in the headlines? Because they can spin this all they want. Sure, Trump is not kicking Harris's ass quite as badly as he was kicking Biden's ass. He's still kicking her ass, however. What about the other ones that have Trump hitting 50 almost? Who are they? How many of those voters are pissed? And by the way, this is something you should take with a grain right now. This Trump plus 3 in CNN. Why? First of all, Trump plus 3 is an electoral ass kicking of epic proportions. He's carrying states that are on that peripheral that we've been talking about, or on that periphery that we've been talking about. Minnesota, that's going. Maybe Virginia, maybe. I actually tend to think Maine or Maine. Maine or New Hampshire. I don't know about New Hampshire, but Maine would go before, I think, personally. I could be wrong, but I'm just looking at it from a demographic point of view. I just think there are a lot of working class French Catholics that settled Maine. It's a different area. It's a different situation. I think that honestly, you have Nova and the educated white voter, the educated white liberal. There's a lot of them in Virginia. There's a lot of them in New Hampshire. There are less of them in Maine comparatively. You got them in the 1st district outside Bangor. You got them in Portland, right? But a lot of voters that don't fit that bill in Maine. Anyway, it's also the case that this is right now Harris's honeymoon. And I was debating whether or not to show you the polling memo from Tony Fabrizio, who said, get ready for there to get a bump in the polls for Harris, but it will be temporary. She will have this honeymoon. She will have the convention. She will get bumps for both. And then they will go back to reverting to where this race has been the whole time. And I can see that happening as a scenario, but I can also see that not happening at all. And that's why I want to poll it myself, because I want to know. Because if that's the best bump you can get, you're going to get your ass kicked badly. They just upended the justice system. They upended every norm and institution we have. They just tossed self-governance in the garbage. Their donors, their rich white liberal donors, selected a candidate. Not because Joe Biden's senile, by the way. This is important to note. Not because Joe Biden is senile. Everyone knew Joe Biden was senile. But because that last round of polling that they conducted internally, which I will tell you about in a second right now, showed that Biden was not going to recover. This was headed toward what I told you on Monday. This was headed toward an epic collapse, like an 08 style collapse only for Democrats instead of Republicans. And that Trump was and Biden couldn't recover. And he was going to lose Virginia. He was going to lose New Hampshire. He was going to lose Minnesota. He was down in Minnesota in this internal poll. It did show Harris doing better, but it did not show Harris winning. It showed Harris losing and losing pretty badly, like Trump winning comfortably. It's just possible that it wasn't an epic meltdown. And that's why they pulled the trigger. And that's why donors threatened to withhold their money if Biden did not get out. This is the best they got. Trump plus 3? That's as close as they can get. Folks, you know how our polling works. We don't get the Biden plus 10s and the Trump plus 10. We don't do that. Not in our polling. That does not happen. A Trump plus 3 is a huge victory for Donald Trump. If we come back with a Trump plus 3, they're in deep shit. It was Trump plus 6 last time, but what happened when we lean them? Which we're going to do. I'm telling you, anything, Trump plus anything, is a potential wipeout for Democrats up and down the ballot. Because, let's not forget, Trump tends to underperform in the polls by about 2.7% in general presidential elections. 2.7% is his average underperformance. If that happens anywhere near happens again, oh my God. I mean, guys, get with reality. This is supposed to be good news for them. This is a catastrophe. All right. Speaking of which, what are they going to run on? Oh, let me shut up and play the rest of Harry. But when we get done with that, we have to talk about what are they going to run on. And let me just see in the CNN poll. Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense that Harris apparently hangs on to 95% of Biden's support from 2020, where Trump hangs on to 92. Then how could Trump be up by 3? That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. What do you have? 25% of the electorate's new voters? That doesn't make any sense. It sounds like you fudged the shit out of something. I'm just telling you. 37% of in the last poll said that their vote for Biden was to express their support of Biden. It looks like 74% now say that of Trump. Only about half say that of Harris. So Harris has a huge deficit when it comes to motivation, enthusiasm, and all in all, how much her voters love her versus Trump. Trump's voters absolutely love him. Even Trump is up, by the way, since the assassination attempt. Trump's favorability ratings are up. He takes 53% of men. That's 1 point less than what he took against Biden in the last poll. It looks like this is weird. This doesn't make any sense. He's doing better among Republicans than she's doing among Democrats. Here we go. Here's what I wanted to know. So Trump led. Okay, there seems to be a switch in the voters of 18 to 34. This is what I wanted to know. Trump led Biden 49 to 42 against in their last poll. Now she leads Trump 47 to 43. That's perfectly on par with the clip I'm about to finish playing. It's better, but it's not good enough. Trump's support among black voters is down from 23 to 15. I just don't. This is why I have to pull this myself. I don't buy this. For years, Harris did worse among black voters than Biden did. She has no connection to the black community. Biden does. He even had nostalgia from the Obama years. I just don't believe this. I'm sorry. I don't believe it. If I poll it and I find it myself, I'll believe it, but I don't. And by the way, 15% is very close to what we said was probably the low end of the realistic figure we can expect Donald Trump to earn from black voters. So if we were looking at those subgroup sampling errors and we gave Trump the low end of that range, we're looking at about 15, 16, maybe even, 19 in some polls. I just think that some of the Maris poll yesterday has Trump at 34% of the black vote. That's a little bit high. I think some of the ones we have are a little bit high. So I'm trying to be conservative and do the low end of the spectrum. 15, 16% is, again, a catastrophe. You have to understand the CNN poll had Donald Trump at 4% of the black vote in 2020. Obviously, he won about 2 to 4 times that amount, depending on which margin, depending on which vote share you're talking about. So this is, it's an unwinnable election for her. Those numbers are an unwinnable. So what? She got closer. This is still a huge landslide. It's unwinnable. She cannot win with this. I'm sorry. It's just true. And female voters were tied at 46. They're now Harris plus 5. That's not good enough, especially since Trump is stomping her with men. Stomping her. Independents, Trump has been winning independents by enormous margins in these other polls. He's only up by 3 here, so I don't know. We'll see. It's weird. It's like Harris isn't getting, she's getting 81% of Biden's former voters. So I just don't, this poll's a little bit weird to me. I'll be honest with you. Now, that's statistics, and sometimes that's just honest, and that can happen. But some of this stuff doesn't look right. I have to compare the demographics of the last poll they conducted with the demographics of this poll, because I think that I think this is a potential weighting thing. I don't want to say that. We'll see. But if they just like weighted to a more educated sample, that's what it looks like may have happened, which means even those younger voters, for instance, you're going to get a lot more voters who have like post-grad degrees who are like 25 to 29. And that would explain why the under 34 has changed. And I hate to say it, but it kind of looks like that's what they did here. It's possible. We'll see, though. We'll see. The poll also suggests that Republicans have Trump has Republicans locked. This is the strongest share of the Republican vote that they've polled so far, meaning he has his base solidified. She does not. Even though they're more rallied behind her, they're not solidified. And by the way, remember, when we leaned voters, many of the base voters that would say that they're not voting for Biden or they're undecided, they lean to him anyway. Do you remember? They lean to him anyway. Interestingly enough, it doesn't look like they did any third-party candidates, because that is one question that we were exploring. In a head-to-head, they would lean to Biden, most of them, almost all of them. And it would get closer. Remember, it was like Trump plus 6, then it was only Trump plus 4 or Trump plus 3 with all those leaners. However, when we did the 3-way, the 5-way, right, even the 6-way, some of those voters, those Democratic voters, did not want to vote for the Biden-Harris ticket, and they would go to someone else like Cornel West or Jill Stein. Interestingly enough, it doesn't look like CNN polled that, and it would be interesting to know. All right, let's finish this clip, and then we're going to move on to something, because it's 1:15, and there are 2 more clips I want to play, and then I want to go on this. I want to take a trip down memory lane, and I want to talk about Harris, like, because this is a question of her accomplishments and her qualifications. We started talking about this on Monday, and if they go down a certain road, they're going to find themselves at a dead end and not able to turn back around, and they're just going to get pummeled. But let's do it.
Game-changing stuff, Mr. Berman.
All right, what have we seen in terms of
Be slightly better, but this is not game-changing stuff, Mr. Berman.
All right.
Okay, so they're saying that Harris is plus 9 in that poll, which is far, far less than Biden was. Even in the new CNN poll that they just came up with, it's actually less. It's only Harris plus 4. So in Enton's analysis, Harris's polling was actually better with these voters under 35. In the CNN poll, it's not even Harris plus 9, it's Harris plus 4. So, and Enton is saying, this isn't game changing. It's not enough. And they're right, by the way.
What have we seen in terms of
Oh, and watch seniors. Okay. Biden polled better with seniors than he actually performed, but he still polled better than Democrats. Is Harris going to, God, the hiccups suck. Is Harris going to be able to do as well with seniors? Even if Biden loses them, which the polling suggested he was going to win them in 2020, and he did not. He lost them. The polling was better for Biden. Will they vote for Harris the way that they would vote for Biden? I don't think so. So maybe she does a little bit better with younger voters against Trump, but does worse with seniors. That's devastating, especially since seniors vote at much higher rates, and it could be a larger polling error than it would have been against Biden. So maybe Trump didn't outperform his polls all that much against Biden, but among Harris, he could, because this is what makes for a big, that's the kind of thing that makes for a significant polling error. Like the New York Times had Biden up by 9 nationally. They had him leading Trump among seniors by like 6 points. He lost seniors. So obviously they wound up overstating Biden's support badly. Now Harris could find herself in that position whereas Biden maybe would not have. It's an interesting point to remember. Let's roll.
Motivation.
Yeah, so, the other thing is we talk about vote choice, right? But let's also talk about motivation, right? Because it's not just who you would support, it's whether or not you'd come out to the polls. And this, I think, is rather interesting. Do Democrats say they're more motivated to turn out after Biden left the race? Well, we do see a significant portion of Democrats who say yes, 39%. The thing I was interested in was it disproportionately younger voters who said that they were more likely to turn out or more motivated to turn out. And what we see here is it's 42%.
Polling
Not
error
a
in
big
the
difference
making.
between 42 and 39%. So this idea, again, that the vice president has unique potential to dig in and get young voters.
Understand what he's saying. I don't mean to interrupt him. I'm sorry, and I'll go back and give him his thought, but understand what he's saying. Younger voters are not much more likely at all to say that they're more motivated to vote now. So it doesn't matter if she's doing better with some of these voters. It doesn't matter. These are registered voters, not who's actually likely to turn out. Trump may end up still doing as well as he was going to do against Biden anyway, because they don't come out. And then FYI, she loses seniors by a larger margin than Biden was going to lose them by, and really is a huge polling error. This is a disaster for them. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to sow complacency for Republicans. I don't want to do that. I'm just simply saying there's this. If I was a Democrat, man, I'd be shitting my pants right now. That's the truth.
This idea, again, that the vice president has unique potential to dig in and get young voters to turn out. John, it's just not there in the numbers, despite all the internet memes that are going around.
At least not yet. And one of the issues,
at least not yet, right, Harry?
I think you were among the first to point out.
Oh,
young voters.
There it is. Wait.
Trend, which I think you were among the first to point out.
What? He was among the first in mainstream media to acknowledge I was right. Get out of here. These people, this is what I wanted to show you. If you go back to the first segment, I was warning you this was coming. This is what I wanted you to hear.
Just not there in the numbers, despite all the internet memes that are going around.
At least not yet. And one of the issues has been, Harry, this trend, which I think you were among the first to point out.
What? I'm sorry. He was among the first to admit I was right about young voters, to admit that I was right about black voters, to admit that I was right about Hispanic voters. What a bunch of bullshit. Anyway,
young voters
must be nice.
Have changed or say they are changing in a relatively short period of time.
Yeah, oftentimes it's difficult to go against the grain. Kamala Harris may be fighting uphill. So I want to look at party identification again. Voters under the age of 35. Go back to 2020. This is the Pew Research study. This is one of the best studies that we have. And look at that. 56% of young voters said that, in fact, they were Democrats. They identified as Democrat or lean Democratic. You look down at 2024, it's 49%. Look at the Republican jump from 39 to 49%. So when we say that Harris is doing worse than Biden, it's not that she's uniquely bad. It's rather she's fighting uphill. She's trying to fight against a wave that is going against the Democrats among young voters. And Harris may be unique in some ways. Maybe she does slightly better than the generic Democrat, but not all that much.
Yeah, what this was shaping up to be a generational shift. The question is, was it just about Biden? Or was it about his administration? We may find out soon.
We may find out soon, but at this particular point, it doesn't look like Harris is going to be able to fight against the grain too much, Mr.
Harriet, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Kate.
Make Republicans cool again. Do you think that would have happened? You think we'd even be seeing that trend if Donald Trump wasn't the nominee or the leader of the party since 2016? Do you think you would be seeing this trend? You think Ron DeSantis would be super appealing to young voters nationally? Think Nikki Haley would be appealing to young voters on a national level? Do you think the party under Nikki Haley would be cool? Like culturally cool? You think it would be cool to be a Republican if either Nikki Haley or Ron DeSantis were the leaders of the Republican Party? I'm just asking a simple, objective question. I'm not being a prick here. Of course not. Of course not. Give me a break. Give me a break. No way. No chance. All right. The question is, though, however, how much is the media going to be able to hide her record, right? How much is the media going to be able to hide her or not hide her record. I mean, the fact that she really has no record, right? How long will it be before people start asking what in the hell it is that Kamala Harris has ever done? And when we come back from our break, which is going to be a very quick, short 2-minute break after this word from our sponsor, that's what we're going to talk about. Okay. All right. But let's have that word right now from our friends at the Wellness Company, as always. All right. We got these super cool. I love them. Wellness emergency kits, which, I mean, this is not about them, but you can pick your kit. Of course, they got the medical emergency kit, the first aid emergency kit, the contagion emergency kit, the travel emergency kit. Laura and I are going to have them all, and we have 2 of one already. So it's just peace of mind. It's the same as the link in the description that I'm going to read to you right now. It's all the same. All right. So whether you're going for the spike, which we're going to talk about in a second, or you're going for the emergency kits, using the promo code TPP is going to save you some money and get you shipped out quick. All right. And it's the same website, same thing. Just remember that and go and get some when you're there. But listen, as I talked to you about on Monday, AstraZeneca had to admit in court recently that the COVID-19 vaccine could result in life-threatening blood clots. The 4 Freedoms poll conducted by Barnes and I to gauge, of course, vaccine injury was shocking. The amount of people who said that they know someone who died, that they know someone or themselves who were severely injured or handicapped as a result of the COVID-19 vaccine is unheard of high. If you would ask this about the flu shot or something like that, you would never ever see numbers like this. All right. Oh man, I can't get this thing to plug in anymore for the life of me. Anyway, but this admission by AstraZeneca is the first of its kind. It's certainly, given these numbers, folks, will not be the last after the damage that we have seen these vaccines cause. The question now is, if you got the vax, what can you do about it? Unfortunately, Dr. Peter McCullough and his team at the Wellness Company have been leading experts in treating vaccine injury, and they started this early on. Their research has shown that nattokinase, along with bromelain and curcumin, which is derived from turmeric, has great potential in detoxing side effects. And where can you find these? In Dr. Peter McCullough's published-based spike detox trio, which is the gold standard for combating the spike protein. To date, tens of thousands of people have followed Dr. Peter McCullough's protocol and taken the base spike detox trio from the Wellness Company. The results have been nothing short of miraculous. I could tell you stories all day, every day. I get them all the time. I get texts, I get emails saying, man, that spike detox trio that you were talking about on the show, I got it. My wife loves it. I love it. We're taking it. It's part of our regimen now. Thanks for letting us know about it. But I could tell you all those stories. Go to their website, and they're gonna speak those reviews speak for themselves. It's a powerful combination of nattokinase, bromelain, and curcumin. It's 100% natural. It's recommended by the Wellness Company's medical board in a 3 to 6 month regime that will get you back to feeling like you did before taking the jab. And Dr. Peter McCullough notes, quote, out of all the available therapies I've used in my practice, I believe that nattokinase and related peptides hold the greatest promises for patients at this time, unquote. Also, in his own words, isn't it interesting? Natural substances to combat this man-made disaster. That's the best way forward. And it is. It's a man-made virus, man-made vaccine, both wreaking havoc on an unassuming population. But at least finally there's hope. And that hope is in the Spike Detox Trio. Reclaim your health. Go to twc.health/TPP. Link is in the description. twc.health/TPP. And use the code, TPP is the code, to save yourself 10% off and get free shipping. All right. And by the way, for those kits, if you're going to grab them while you're at it, which you should, they're only available in the US. All right. But look into it. Check out the reviews. Wow, that was a loud knuckle pop, wasn't it? All right. There's going to be the Democrats who are going to run with their media, corrupt media. If you insult Kamala Harris. Oh, by the way, did you see the AP fact check on us? Cool. If you insult Kamala Harris, you're either a racist, a misogynist, or both. And then they're going to run all of these stupid clips, one of which I'm going to play from you. And then you're going to have the Trump campaign trying to tie her to the Biden administration. By the way, Associated Press. Okay? Let me just say this before we go on. The affair is free game. because she was not qualified to beat her opponent for the district attorney's office, which led to her entire political career. She began to bang Willie Brown in order to railroad that guy who was, by the way, an honest man and the best, most qualified man for the job. So that's why she can't run an office in California. She can't run a district attorney's office. That's why she cannot run a U.S. Senate office. That's why she could not run a U.S. presidential election campaign. And that's why she cannot run the vice president's office. Everything she runs turns to shit because she is not a good leader or manager. She's abusive and totally chaotic, and everyone who works for her has to pay for her incompetence and the fact that she's unqualified and should not be there. Everybody. That's the story. 90% of her employees are wrong. They're all making it up. And she's got the audacity to make fun of people's sex lives anyway. The AP said because Willie Brown was separated, somehow it makes it all right and the claim is bogus or something. She banged an old, fat, married man to get to where she is today, and she did it because she was not qualified. Nothing about that statement is untrue. It doesn't matter if he was separated or not, dumbasses. All you're doing is confirming that he was a married man by saying that. And you didn't even dip into the fact on why she banged him in the first place. I'm sure a young, attractive, upcoming, aspiring politician was just so attracted to a fat, old, married man. I mean, are you freaking kidding me? These people have fact checkers, have no shame whatsoever. I would ask the people who do this in the media a very simple question. Would you want your daughter to do and behave to do what Kamala Harris did, to behave like Kamala Harris behaves? Would you want your daughter to emulate Kamala Harris? Or do you want your daughter to be self-respecting and to climb the ladder through meritocracy and through hard work and qualifications? We haven't even gotten to the Secret Service director, Cheadle, resigning yet. We haven't even gotten there yet. But this is what happens when people aren't qualified. Do you want your daughter to get to the position that they end up in because of their hard work and because they did everything a man is expected to do and better, obviously? Or do you want them to slut their way to the top? Let's cut the shit. It's not really true. He was separated. Ah, bafagool. So sick of you people misleading everyone. Disgusting, man. Let's ask one of her only friends. She's not even really, but another one who's another nasty liberal woman. This is why. I mean, they're supportive of each other. Let's ask one of them what Kamala Harris has ever done in her entire existence in the U.S. Senate or as vice president. Give me a single accomplishment, please, Senator Elizabeth Warren. Go.
It's been her biggest accomplishment since she's been vice president.
Oh, I have to say, since the Dobbs opinion, the way that she has rallied women and friends of women, also called men, around this country on the issue of abortion and just taken it home. First vice president in history to visit an abortion clinic. Go get them. You know, she's so.
These are not accomplishments. Do I have to pause this and state the obvious? These are not actually accomplishments. An accomplishment would be if Joe Biden appoints you as the borders are and you successfully rein in illegal immigration, which was her job, right? That's what Joe Biden appointed her to do, correct? Right? If she did succeed in that, that would be an accomplishment. Being appointed the border czar because you're a DEI VP and, you know, that's it. Like you made it to that position because you are able to flex yourself in other positions. That is not in and of itself an accomplishment. You have to actually achieve something. The entire time she was in the U.S. Senate, as I will show you in a second, she hadn't, until we get to where I'm going, she hadn't a single legislative accomplishment to speak of when she was already gearing up to run for president. She never had a single bill, ladies and gentlemen, that she ever put on the floor of the House or the Senate or anywhere that passed and became law. Nothing, not one. I'm not exaggerating. Not a single bill. Nothing. As vice president, she has never been the head of a single agenda item that became a law. She's done nothing. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris haven't spoken more than twice in like 5 months. Do you know that? That was in the Washington Post the other day. They don't even talk. They don't coordinate. They don't do anything. She's just walking around, burning staff. The churn rate is unbelievably high. She's just walking around doing what she wants, putting on a good face, a fake accent everywhere she goes to match the crowd, and hasn't done a damn thing. What Elizabeth Warren is saying right now, oh, great, she visited an abortion clinic. That's an accomplishment? She showed up for the right to end a human life. Whether you agree with abortion or not, that's not an accomplishment. If that's an accomplishment, congratulations to anyone who has ever gone to an abortion clinic. Apparently, you're now qualified to be the vice president of the United States. And hell, even take over for the president of the United States because he's senile and you can't hide it anymore, which she did. The Trump's campaign's ad about her being part of the cover-up is magic. And I'm going to show you it's magic in a second. But this is unbelievable.
Someone who talks openly about things that were kind of challenging for some people to talk about, but also to talk about it with
President Biden didn't even mention the word abortion in his State of the Union.
But Vice President Harris has, and she's talked about it both with compassion, but also with a sense of what is right. How can we be?
I just did. Am I qualified to be the vice president of the United States now? Can I take over for Joe Biden instead? I just did it. Any talking head idiot on TV or a podcast, are we now all qualified to be the vice president of the United States? She is now droned on for 1 minute and 58 seconds and has not been able to give a single accomplishment. Not one.
A country that half of America lost rights because of an extremist Supreme Court put in place by Donald Trump.
Again, did you hear any accomplishment there? Going overseas and making a fool out of yourself because you don't know what nation you're in or you don't know geography well enough to know where you are is not an accomplishment. She visited. By Elizabeth Warren standards, we're all supposed to get up and give her a fucking trophy for it or something. She went to an abortion clinic. She's gone to Germany. She's done that. What the hell are you talking? What has the woman done with her time in office? And it's 1:37, so I got to speed it along. But believe me, voters are going to ask that because they're asking right now, why the hell didn't Kamala Harris say anything about the state that Joe Biden was in? Here's a focus group on MSNBC talking about just that.
For President Biden being in office in this condition, who deserves the blame?
His close staff. They work with him every day.
So I think that's what also makes me nervous about the Vice President Harris.
Yeah. Talk about that a bit.
So yes, she's going to be in it, but she also helped keep him in where he's at right now. And if he really is as bad as what they've been saying, I think if he steps down as president and she steps into the presidency before the end of his term, it almost makes me question a little bit more why it didn't happen sooner. She's worked with him. She's been, to my understanding, with him daily, or at least a couple of days a week. Why hasn't this been brought to attention? If she's willing to hide that type of information, once she's in office, now what she's willing to hide for herself.
So, if she's willing to lie this very wise swing state voter in the state of Wisconsin says, if she was willing to lie to me about the state of Joe Biden's mental condition, what else will she lie to me about when she herself is in office? I'm telling you right now, she ain't getting that woman's vote. She's not. Maybe that woman won't vote for Donald Trump. I don't know what's in her head and her heart, but she may vote for Jill Stein. She may vote for somebody else. Who knows? Maybe she'll vote for RFK. I don't know. But she's not going to vote for a person that she just said that about. I hate to break everybody's heart. It's not going to happen. She may say so in the next panel on MSNBC. But when she goes to fill out that ballot, this is human nature. She is not going to vote for her. There are going to be a lot of voters who say that. There is no chance the vice president did not know that the president of the United States was mentally retarded. There's no chance. How stupid do they think people are? I mean, I know they're dealing with their own base in a bubble sometimes. And since we, what we had just talked about before, the hive mind and the inability to critically think or independently think, which is very, very key. I know we were just talking about that, but that's not everybody. In fact, that's like 30-something% of the electorate. That's it. Contrary to these shit polls that keep coming out. It's 36, 37%. Maybe this time, if they're lucky, it may not even be 33 to 38. Could be what that's the range we're looking at right now. They're not even getting to 39. Not with these trends. They're not. So where you got to get the rest of the votes from someone else? You're going to get them from independents? I don't think so. There's one right there. She just said I can't trust her. That's what she said. Truth is, nobody really vetted this woman. Nobody but Peter Schweitzer vetted this woman. In 2020, when you need me to open that, buddy? Okay. In 2020, when Kamala Harris and Cory Booker were gearing up to run for president, neither one of them, they had their staffs that they were all picking. They had their intro videos they were all cutting, right? They had all this stuff going on and getting ready to gear up. What they didn't have was something we've talked about many times. It is absolutely essential, and you need it to win not only a nomination, but ultimately the presidency of the United States. You need what's everyone used to call, a presidential justification. It is, very simply, why you? And why you now? What is it about you that makes you the right leader for the country right now in this time? What justifies your candidacy for the presidency of the United States? Like him, dislike him, love him, hate him, Barack Obama had a presidential justification. George W. Bush, no matter what you think about him, running against Al Gore, he had a presidential justification. I shouldn't have to explain Barack Obama's hope and change, okay? And he fit the bill for it. George W. Bush was the son of a guy who was tossed out for his successor, that would later disgrace the Oval Office. Even though they approved of the job he did as being president, they wanted integrity back into the White House. So they looked at Bush the Younger as a way to basically rehabilitate the White House. And Bush was saying all the things that Americans wanted to hear pre 9/11. We can't be the police of the world. Trade deals suck. We need to revamp them. He, of course, betrayed everybody. But that's what he said. He had a presidential justification. In 2004, Kerry did not. The war wasn't that unpopular yet. He did for Democrats to win the nomination, but that justification fell short with the general electorate. And they kept with Bush because Bush was the leader who got them through 9/11 and made them feel safe. Kerry was advocating the opposite, and it wasn't good enough. And I got to be careful not to go over here because I got a brief window between now and Charlie's show. And of course, Donald Trump had one of the most obvious presidential justifications in 2016. He was an outsider, a businessman. The country is being mismanaged. They're managing the decline of the United States. Huge chunks of the population, including those who had been voting Democrat, had been left behind economically, culturally, everything. And we were looking as a nation as a whole for someone to bring a wrecking ball to it all, to change the course and not forget about us. obvious what the justification is this year. They stole it from you. They stole it from you with the lies. Lie after lie after lie. Even if they're not rabid ideologues, 51 intelligence officers. COVID, the wet market. I'll shut down the virus, not the economy. I mean, I could just go on and on. It was all bullshit. Collusion was bullshit. Americans know that now. They didn't know before. They want their president back. They want their economy back. They want their Christmas back. They want their eggs back. They want their milk back. They want their cheap gas back. They want America back. They want to make America great again. It's that simple. I'm sorry. I hate to tell liberals. It really is that simple. You're losing that argument. What's Kamala Harris's justification? Suck it up? Oh, sorry. It's just too easy. It's too easy. She had no accomplishments. Nothing. Neither her or Cory Booker. Which is where I want to bring you now with the context I want to give. That is the context I want to give to you before we move into this. The media never investigated this story. And somebody asked me about it, and I told them that I would devote a little bit of the show to talking about the story. So here we go. Okay, let me just put this. We all know about the Jussie Smollett hoax. The hate crime hoax where Jussie Smollett basically faked being lynched or an attempted lynching. Okay? He said, and it goes a little something like this. Here's the wiki on it. I was nearly lynched by a small group of, not mob, but an angry group of MAGA supporters in downtown Chicago in the freezing temperature. And they almost lynched me. All right. They hated me and called me the N-word and all sorts of names, and they were going to kill me. I barely escaped with my life. All right. It immediately smelled like shit to people like me and others who have been doing this for a long time. And we know, there are no MAGA supporters in that neighborhood. That's number one. All right. Or wasn't back then. There certainly are no white MAGA hat wearing, red hat wearing supporters in that neighborhood. That time of night, in that cold of weather, it just all seems so ridiculous. As it turns out, Jussie Smollett promised two Nigerian brothers, black, not white, who were aspiring actors, that he would get them a spot on Empire if they would help him fake being lynched by MAGA supporters. Okay. That's the story. There's the wiki. I'm going to shut up and kind of just take this thing down the line here. And I'm going to read a story that seems almost irrelevant, but it isn't. In fact, I wrote it. I wrote it when it happened from doing what I do, from an empirical, data-based point of view. If we were to look at the empirical evidence in the data, because amazingly, Jussie Smollett did this at the most opportune time for a certain U.S. senator. And I wanted to know, does the empirical evidence suggest we even needed what that U.S. senator was pushing? And when was the last time a lynching even happened in this country? It was such an unbelievable story. I had to go look for myself. Granted, this is something you have to know too, because it's amazing when you think about, maybe some of you are newer to this, how far will the media go? The Washington Post changed the definition of a lynching in their database to try to make this more believable to support Democrats in their arguments, and then also everything else that was going. So same way that they changed the definition of mass shooting, by the way, in an effort to make it look like there are more mass shootings. All right. They did the same thing in an effort to make it look like there are more lynchings in the United States. However, I used the original definition and the one used by the FBI. All right. Federal law enforcement. Does empirical evidence suggest the U.S. needs anti-lynching legislation? Bear with me as I read this entire article, and then I am going to make a claim. The data on lynching strongly indicate politicians hype fear for political gain. Now, that may sound just totally obvious to you, right? Just bear with me. Actor and Empire star Jussie Smollett has been charged with a Class 4 felony after he allegedly staged a hate crime, specifically a beating and attempted lynching. He did. We know it now. Of course, he was basically let off because of him having friends in high places. And I'm going to show you some of those friends very soon. While it is the lowest felony classification, it carries a potential sentence of 1 to 3 years in prison. Two top 2020 Democratic presidential candidates used the apparent hate crime hoax to push anti-lynching legislation known as the Justice for Victims of Lynching Act. Senators Kamala Harris, Democrat, California, and Cory Booker, Democrat, New Jersey, have no sponsored legislation to speak of or to tout on the campaign trail. They rushed to Twitter and to judgment, hoping to advance the bill in the U.S. Congress. Before I go on, I just want to point out that Cory Booker, in his campaign ad, would put the shooter of the real shooter, the man who killed Malcolm X, is actually in Cory Booker's campaign ad. I fucking shit you not. I'm not joking. Folks, I wish some of this was crazy. I wish some of this was out in left field. It's not. 2 men did more than 20 years in federal prison. Or, no, it was New Jersey State Prison. 2 men, no, was it? I'll have to check. Either way, prison. 2 men did more than 2 decades of their lives in prison for a crime they did not commit. One of them, when he was released, by the way, died immediately after health issues. So tragic. Finally gets his freedom back and his life back. The real shooter, who was protected by the FBI, who was an FBI asset, got to live his life, despite being a serial rapist, by the way, got to live his life in peace in Newark under the protection of Democratic politicians and the FBI. And one of those politicians later, as he was an older man, was Cory Booker. He ended up in Cory Booker's campaign video. And when he did die, the lieutenant governor of New Jersey attended his funeral. Folks, I am so, like, some things really make me sad to tell you, but that is all true. Everything I just told you is 100% true. Now, here's a quote. Quote, "This was an attempted modern-day lynching," then Senator Harris tweeted with specificity. Quote, "No one should have to fear for their life because of their sexuality or color of their skin. We must confront this hate." Unquote. Because, of course, with just Jussie Smollett, it's a twofer. He's black and gay. Then she tweets very next day, or no, hold on one second. Later, she's rapidly fire tweeting here. And by the way, she was not a very active social media account until this hate crime hoax popped off. And she @s him. Jussie Smollett is one of the kindest, most gentle human beings I know. I'm praying for his quick recovery. And then goes on to state what I just read to you. The very next day, Senator Harris tweeted that passing a, quote, "federal anti-lynching law must be a priority for this new Congress." The entire tweet reads as follows: "Lynching is a dark and despicable part of our nation's history. Yet it is still not a federal hate crime. Passing federal anti-lynching law must be a priority of this new Congress." It's certainly true lynchings are a, quote, "dark and despicable part of our nation's history," unquote. But before Jussie Smollett brought lynching back into the national discussion, was there really a need to make anti-lynching legislation a, quote, "priority"? Let's look at the empirical evidence. The last clear-cut case of lynching in the United States was in 1984, nearly 4 decades before this happened. The lynching of Michael McDonald in Mobile, Alabama, was the last traditionally defined case. Michael, a young African-American man, was beaten and murdered by several members of the Ku Klux Klan. They hung his body from a tree, the very perceived definition of a lynching. Did the justice system work for Michael McDonald? The Justice of Victims of Lynching Act suggests the justice system doesn't work for lynching victims. It also suggests lynching must be classified as a federal hate crime in order to achieve justice. You should read it. But did the justice system work for Michael McDonald? Local police officers initially claimed the murder was a drug deal gone wrong. In truth, the local police chief suspected the Ku Klux Klan from the jump, though the investigation was largely taken away from the state. Beulah May McDonald, the victim's mother, contacted Reverend Jesse Jackson, and protests to pressure the police were organized, and the investigation was handed off to the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Thomas Figures, the assistant U.S. attorney in Mobile, asked the Justice Department to authorize a second investigation, and DOJ spent Special Agent James Brodman, Michael Figures, a state senator, civil rights activist, and the brother to the assistant U.S. attorney Figures, came in as well to represent Beulah May McDonald. In 1983, Agent Brodman arrested two suspects, the ringleader named Henry Hayes and James Knowles, and the latter soon flipped on his fellow Klan members. Henry Francis Hayes was convicted by a jury of his peers and sentenced to death. He was incarcerated and sat on death row in the Holman Correctional Facility in Escambia County, Alabama, and in 1997, he was executed in the electric chair. Hayes was the first to be executed in Alabama for a white-on-black crime since 1913. And the only KKK member to be executed during the 20th century for the murder of an African American. There are two ways to interpret those statistics. The first focuses only on the indisputable fact that it is a sad statistic, given the number of lynchings in the 1900s. But it is also evidence of true progress. No one escaped justice. James Lillian Tiger Knowles was spared the chair, but U.S. District Court Judge W. Brevard Hand sentenced him to life in prison. As a result of his cooperation and good behavior, he was released on parole in 2010. On May 18, 1989, Benjamin Franklin Cox Jr., then a 28-year-old truck driver from Mobile, was convicted in state court for being an accomplice. Mobile County Circuit Court Judge Michael Zogby sentenced him to life in prison. Benny Hayes, the elder, was indicted for inciting the murder, and the motive was revealed as an attempt to reverse perceptions of a weakened Klan. His case ended when he collapsed from poor health in court. Judge Zogby declared a mistrial, and the 77-year-old died of a heart attack before he could be retried. I mean, he literally went down in court, folks. Literally went down in court. All right. In 1987, a jury ordered the United Klans of America, the UKA, to pay Beulah May McDonald damages in the amount of $7 million, which bankrupted the organization. No amount of money could bring back her son, but his legacy includes setting a precedent for civil legal action against hate groups. It's a landmark case. Lynchings pre-Michael McDonald in 1974. Okay, because let's look at the problem in its totality. All right, because you hear the word lynching, and obviously a certain narrative forms in your head. But listen to this. In 74, 7 years before Michael McDonald, Marion Pisco was lynched in Wayne, Michigan. The 54-year-old was just, quote, in the wrong place at the wrong time, unquote. Who quoted that? The offender. The victim, who was the only victim of a lynching in the 1970s at all, also happened to be white. He was a Polish Jew, and he was killed by young black men. They lynched him he was lynched by young black men who were just looking for a white victim to lynch. During the 50s and 60s, the height of the battle for civil rights in the U.S., we found 4 lynchings on the record that are classified, by the way, by the feds. However, it must be conceded it is at least somewhat likely that there went unreported or undocumented lynchings during this period, right? I mean, can we be honest, guys? I'm sure they lynched an untold number of black people, and we just don't know. In 54, Isadora Banks was lynched in Marion, Arkansas for the crime of being prosperous. Emmett Till, perhaps the most well-known case, came a year later in LaFleur, Mississippi. And you can see here, though, again, this one really pisses me off. Mac Charles Parker. This was one of the most saddest cases I ever investigated, I'll be honest. He was kidnapped. He was lynched because he was accused of kidnapping and raping a white woman. He almost certainly did not do it. Emmett Till, of course, was lynched for flirting with a white girl. Now, It must be noted that the accusations of kidnap and rape surrounding Mac Charles Parker were disputed. We'll never know the truth, but I'm just telling you, I personally believe they're bullshit. I don't think he did that at all. James Reeb, lynched in Selma, Alabama in 1965, was also white. His crime was being a Northerner who helped blacks and, quote, ate at an restaurant. I'm not going to say the word. Media will clip me again, take me out of context. All of the aforementioned lynching cases above are horrific crimes. It also should not go unsaid that Senator Tim Scott, Republican from South Carolina, is a co-sponsor of the anti-lynching legislation known as the Justice for Victims of Lynching Act. But Jussie Smollett isn't Michael McDonald, and he damn sure isn't Emmett Till. America in the modern era is no longer the same, quote, dark and despicable, unquote, nation politicians like Kamala Harris want us to believe it to be. Democrats like Senator Kamala Harris and Cory Booker remind voters of our nation's sinful past because they have nothing else to run on. The data, the empirical evidence, don't lie. Politicians do. Now, does anyone seriously believe that Kamala Harris's bill... Okay, let me just flatly say it. Now that you have the whole timeline, the whole story, and you can go back and look at when those tweets were posted, when the Jussie Smollett fake hate crime hoax popped off, it first appeared in a liberal, obscure, liberal rag magazine that nobody covers. And yet it was used as a jumping, as a platform to jump into the mainstream. Those tweets were fired off within minutes of the headline from that obscure left-wing liberal rag magazine. Those tweets were loaded, cocked, and ready to go. You don't have to be fucking Columbo or Dick fucking Tracy to realize that Kamala Harris, who is friends with Jussie Smollett, put her friend up to committing a fake hate crime hoax so she could push her anti-lynching bill because she had nothing else to run on. You would have to be an idiot not to think that she had planned this with her friend. And that's why Kim Webb and the rest of them ran interference. That's why Michelle Obama ran interference. That's why Maxine Waters ran interference. They didn't want you to find out that at least one U.S. senator, because they're all friends with him, by the way. Maxine Waters is also close friends with Jussie Smollett. So is Michelle Obama. Do you really believe that he fabricated a hate crime hoax, used these poor bastard Nigerian brothers who wanted to be on TV, they aspired to be actors, who exploits and abuses black or brown people now? He found two desperate immigrants to manipulate. And they went on this bullshit hate crime hoax tear, which just so happened to benefit their friend, the U.S. Senator Kamala Harris, who he supported to run for president. If we had a real media, and for that matter, a real law enforcement apparatus infrastructure in this country that wasn't politically corrupted in and of itself, they no doubt would have found the text, the documents, the aides that talk to each other to insulate and protect the rest of them. I have no doubt the FBI has them. And if Kamala Harris is ever president, they will have her by her short and curlies because that's what they do. That's how they operate. They don't ever come public because it's the right thing to do. Oh, by the way, a U.S. senator played a role in a fake hate crime hoax because she wanted it to give her political points. Oh, no. They hold their fire. That's why Hillary Clinton was never prosecuted for all of her pay-for-play offenses. That's why nobody ever came after her for cooking the books for the Clinton charities that they had in New York or elsewhere. That's why the IRS and the New York State, Schneiderman and the rest of them allowed her to violate the law with impunity because that's not what their goal is. If she becomes president, they got her. Now they have a bargaining chip. This is how this country operates. It's not only not a leap, but a teeny little step. Like, this is it. That's as far as you got to go to put this together. We're not stretching here, all right? It's not a huge leap. Like, it's not a Neil fucking Armstrong leap across the moon, folks. They're friends. There wasn't a lynching in this country in decades until she puts a lynching bill up, and then all of a sudden this actor fakes a hate crime. Come on, man. Are you a stupid son of a bitch or what? Did you just fall off the turnip truck? Like, obviously, she put him up to this, or he volunteered to do it either way, but it was very much not a coincidence. Obviously, you got to be the biggest moron on planet Earth to think this is somehow a coincidence. And yet, nobody ever investigated it. Peter Baker gushing over at her in the New York Times. Why don't you do your job, Peter, and fucking investigate that? It's obvious what happened. Give me a break. While I'm fired up and ready to go. Don't forget that I'm going on Charlie Kirk's show. He may pick Shapiro because it's I don't know whether or not Shapiro will decide. We'll see. We'll see. Yeah, we'll see. It's either him, Kelly, or Cooper. That's what I know. It's either him, Kelly, or Cooper. But Pennsylvania, it really comes down. It really comes down to hold on one second. Him, Kelly, or Cooper. It's those three. It might be done. Been on the show. All right, let me just write him back and just tell him that. But don't did you guys join the Zoom meeting? Okay, I got the Zoom meeting. So I'm gonna be getting off and going on Charlie Kirk here while I'm fired up. I'm ready to go. That's great. I mean, come on, guys, give me a freaking break. You gotta be kidding me. Put it together. This is not, again, you don't have to be look in order to figure this one out. Give me a break. All right, look, it's 2:06. I gotta bounce. If you like the show, don't forget to like it and share it far and wide. Link to the public polling project is in the description below. Share that far and wide as well and contribute what you can. The bigger the contribution base we have, the more we'll be able to poll. I'm dying to get out there and poll Harris v. Trump. All right. Tune in Charlie Kirk show like right now. I'm about to go over there and jump in. And I will see you over there shortly. 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Sean Parnell, Battleground Live with Sean Parnell on Rumble. Check out my Twitter feed, locals, anywhere. You'll see, actually, locals, definitely for sure. And you will see it. What else am I missing here? I think that's it. The best place, of course, to follow us is on locals. peoplespundit.locals.com. peoplespundit.locals.com. And I will see you guys very soon. Got a boogie. Nothing but love for you. And as always, deuces. Go to Charlie Kirk. Go to Charlie Kirk right now. Jussie Smollett. Kamala. 2028, baby. Looks like it's Shapiro. That's the third person who told me this. I don't know. We'll see. I know Cooper wants it bad. Let's do this. Jussie fake the hate crime hoax for his friend Kamala. Peace.